Session 16. There are 6 great religions in the world. They can be divided into 2 categories. One consists of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They believe in only one life. You are just between birth and death. There is nothing beyond birth and death. Although they believe in heaven and hell and God, they are the earnings from one life, a single life. The other category consists of Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. They believe in the theory of reincarnation. One is born again and again eternally, unless one becomes enlightened. That was what my grandfather was asking while he was dying. But I was not aware of the whole significance of it, although I repeated the bardo just like a machine. Now I can understand the poor man's concern. You can call it the ultimate concern. If it becomes diseased, is it as in the East? Then it is an obsession, then I condemn it. Then it is more of a disease. It is not something to be praised, but really condemned. Obsession is a psychological way of condemning something, hence I have used the word. As far as the masses in the East are concerned, it has been a disease for thousands of years. It has stopped them from being rich, prosperous, and affluent, because their whole concern was how to stop the wheel. Who then is going to grease it, and who is going to run it smoothly? Indians are obsessed. It has become a disease of the soul to stop the wheel of life and death. Of course, to them, the wheel always reminds them of the block cart. If they want to stop it, I am in perfect agreement. But there are better wheels. One need not stop all of them. In fact, the very idea not to be born again simply shows that you have not lived. It may seem contradictory to you, but let me say it. Only one who has totally lived stops the wheel of life and death. Yet those who want to stop it are those who have lived not at all. They will die a dog's death. India can be called by the psychologists not only obsessive about death, but really possessed by the idea of suicide. In a way, the psychologist would not be wrong. One should live while one is alive. There is no need to think of death. And when death comes, one should die, and die totally. Then there is no need to look backwards. And every moment being total in living, in loving, in dying, that's how one comes to know. To know what? There is no what. Only simply comes to know. Not what, but that, the knower. What is the object? That is one's subjectivity. The moment Bhai Nana died, my grandmother was still laughing the last flicker of her laughter. Then she controlled herself. She was certainly a woman who could control herself. But I was not impressed by her control. I was impressed by her laughter in the very face of death. Again and again I asked her, Nani, can you tell me why you laughed so loudly when death was so imminent? If even a child like me was aware of it, It is not possible that you were not aware. She said, I was aware. That is why I left. I laughed at the poor man trying to stop the wheel unnecessarily, because neither birth nor death mean anything in the ultimate sense. I had to wait for the time when I could ask and argue with her. When I myself become enlightened, I thought, then I will ask her. And that's what I did. The first thing I did after my enlightenment at the age of 21 was to rush to the village where my grandmother was, my father's village. She never left the place where her husband had been burnt. That very place became her home. She forgot all the luxuries that she had been accustomed to. She forgot all the gardens, the fields, and the lake that she had possessed. She simply never went back. She said, what is the point? All is settled. My husband is dead, and the child I love is not there. All is settled. After my enlightenment, I rushed to the village to meet two people. First, Magababa, the man I was talking about before. You will certainly wonder why. Because I wanted somebody to say to me, you are enlightened. I knew it, but I wanted to hear it from the outside too. Magababa was the only man I could ask at the time. I had heard that he had recently returned to the village. I rushed to him. The village was 2 miles from the station. You cannot believe how I rushed to see him. I reached the neem tree. The word neem cannot be translated because I don't think anything like the neem tree exists in the West world. The neem tree is something strange. If you taste the leaves, they are very bitter. You cannot believe that poison could taste more poisonous. I rushed to the neem tree where Magababa sat, and the moment he saw me, do you know what he did? I could not believe it. He touched my feet and wept. I felt very embarrassed because a crowd had gathered and they all thought Magababa had now really mad. Up till then he had been a little mad, but now he is gone forever. And gone forever. But Magababa left, and for the first time in front of the people he said to me, my boy, you have done it. But I knew that one day you would do it. I touched his feet for the first time. I tried to prevent me from doing it, saying, no, don't touch my feet anymore. But I still touched them, even though he insisted. I didn't care and said, shut up, you look after your business and let me do mine. If I am enlightened, as you say, don't prevent an enlightened man from touching your feet. He started laughing and said, you rascal, you are enlightened, but still a rascal. Then I rushed to my grandmother. She looked at me and said, what has happened to you? You are no longer the same. I said, yes, I am no longer the same, and I came to you to share my experience. She said, please, as far as I am concerned, always remain my Raja, my child. So I didn't say anything to her. One day passed, then in the middle of the night she woke me up. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Forgive me. You are no longer the same. You may pretend, but I can see through your pretense. There is no need to pretend. You can tell me what has happened. The child I used to know is dead, but someone far better and luminous has taken his place. I cannot call you my own anymore, but that does not matter. You will be able to be called by millions as theirs, and everybody will be able to feel you as his or hers. I withdraw my claim, but teach me also the way." This is the first time I have told anyone my nanny was my first disciple. I taught her the way, my way is simple, to be silent, to experience in oneself that which is always the observer and never the observed, to know the knower and forget the known. The day my nanny became enlightened, I remember it was the 16th of January 1967. I say without hesitation that she was my first sannyasin, and she was my first enlightened sannyasin. God created the world, man, woman, animals, trees, birds, mountains, everything. Perhaps he was a communist. Now this is not good. At least God should not be a communist. It would not look good to be called Comrade God. Comrade God, how are you? It just doesn't sound good. But the story says he gave everybody 20 years of life. Everybody was given the same. As could be expected, man immediately stood up and said, "Only 20 years. That's not enough. That shows something about man. Nothing is enough. It is never enough." Woman did not stand up. That also shows something about woman. She is satisfied with small things. Her desires are very human. She is not asking for the stars. In fact, she giggles at man for all his effort to reach Everest or the moon or Mars. She cannot understand what all this nonsense is about. Anyway, man stuck to his ground and said, "I'll resist in every possible way this imposition of just 20 years. More is needed." God was at a loss. Being a communist God, what could he do? He had distributed the years equally, but the animals were more understanding than this communist fellow. The elephant laughed and said, "Don't be worried, you can take 10 years from my life, because 20 years is too long. What am I going to do with 20 years? 10 years will do." So man got 10 years of the elephant's life. These are the years between 20 and 30 when a man behaves like an elephant. These are the years when hippies and yippies and other similar tribes are born. Everywhere in the world, they should be called the elephants, thinking too much of themselves. Then the lion stood up and said, "Please accept 10 years from my life. For me, 10 years are more than enough."
Between 30 and 40, man roars like a lion, as if he were Alexander the Great. Even Alexander was not a real lion, so what about the others? Then the tiger stood up and said, when everybody is contributing to poor man, then my contribution is also 10 years from my life. Between 40 and 50, man behaves like a tiger, much reduced in comparison to the lion, very much shaped, no more than a big cat. But the old habit of bragging continues. Then up stood the horse and contributed 10 years or so. Between 50 and 60, a man carries all kinds of loads. He is just a horse, not an ordinary horse either, a very extraordinary horse, loaded with a mountain of worries, but somehow his will is such that he pulls through and goes on and on. At 60, the dog contributed his 10 years, and that is why it is called a dog's death. This story is one of the most beautiful parables. Between 60 and 70, man lives like a dog, barking at everything that moves. He just finds every excuse to bark. The story does not go beyond the 70 because it was originally told before man could expect to live more than 70 years.
You cannot have a death that you have not earned. You cannot have a death that you have not earned, for which you have not been working your whole life. Death is either a punishment or a reward. It all depends on you. If you live superficially, then your death will be just a dog's death. Dogs are heady people, very intellectual. If you live intensely, intuitively, from the heart, intelligently, not intellectually, if you allow your whole being to be involved in everything you do, then you can die a God's death. Let me coin another phrase. Opposite to a dog's death, a God's death. As you can see, dog and God are made of the same letters, just written differently. The same stuff put backwards becomes dog, put rightly becomes God. The substance of existence, your being is the same, whether you stand on your head or your feet, it does not matter. In one way, it matters. If you stand on your head, you will suffer. And if you start walking on your head, when you can visualize yourself to be in the seventh air, but you can jump up and stand on your feet, there is nobody preventing you. This has been my whole teaching. Jump up. Don't do a headstand. Stand on your feet. Be natural. Then you will be living like a God. And a God dies like a God. He lives like a God and dies like a God. And by God I mean simply a master of oneself. Session 18. Sigmund Freud was interviewing one of his patients. He asked the man lying on the couch, "Look, through the window. Can you see the flagpole on the office building across the street?" The old man said, "Of course. Do you think I'm blind? I may be old, but I can see the pole. Everything." "What kind of question is this? Am I paying you to ask such stupid questions?" Freud said, "Wait, this is how psychoanalysis works. Tell me what the pole reminds you of." Old man started giggling. Freud was happy. Very shyly, the old man said, "It reminds me of sex." Freud wanted everybody to prove his new theory. And this was a confirmation, he said. I understand. The pole is nothing but a phallic symbol. You need not be worried. It is absolutely true. This story shows the word obsession, and the whole world can be divided into two categories: people who are obsessed with sex and the people who are obsessed with death. That is the real demarcation line between East and West. It is not a geographical division, but far more important. I told you that the English language goes on taking words from other languages. Geography is a word, like many others, borrowed from Arabic. The East is obsessed with death, the West with sex. A materialist is bound to be obsessed with sex, and a spiritualist obsessed with death. And both are obsessions. And to live a life with any obsession is to live almost without living. It is to miss the whole opportunity. The East and West are two sides of the same coin. It is no coincidence that millions of people never know what real orgasm is. It is for the simple reason that unless you are ready to go into a sort of death, you cannot know what orgasm is. And nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to live, to renew life again and again. In the East, science could not gain any foothold, because then people are trying to stop the wheel. Who is ready to study science? The most constant inquiry in science is to find the cause of the very movement of existence, or in other words, to find some mechanism that moves perpetually on its own, without needing any fuel, without any gas. A perpetual, constant movement unsupported by any energy, because every energy source sooner or later runs dry, and then the wheel will stop. Science is in search of a way to keep the wheel moving forever, to find a movement that is independent of any source of energy. In the East, science could never get started. The car never started. Nobody was interested in getting it started either. They were too worried about how to stop it, because it was rolling downhill. In the East, a totally different thing happened. That certainly had not ever happened in the West. Tantra. The East could explore the deepest core of sexual energy without any inhibition, without any fear. It was not at all worried about sex. Strangely, men like Sigmund Freud, who suffered all kinds of fears and phobias, could become the key figure for this whole century. He was afraid. Literally, if you are obsessed with anything, whether sex or death, those are the two main categories. There are thousands of things in the world, but they will fall into these categories. If you are obsessed with either of these two, you are utterly ignorant and you will remain afraid of light, because in your darkness you have created your own imaginary world of theories, dogmas. You will be afraid of light, of a man bringing a lamp, a man like Diogenes entering naked with a lamp, even in the full sunlight of day. I sometimes think it would have been good for Sigmund Freud if Diogenes had entered his psychoanalyst office with his lamp. The meeting would have produced something of immense value. People like Freud are afraid of light. That's why Diogenes used to carry his lamp. Whenever anybody would ask why he carried the lamp in daylight, he would answer, "I am searching for a man, and I have not found him yet." Diogenes said, "I am sorry to say that I could not find man, but I must say one thing. I still have my lamp with me. Nobody has stolen it." That's great. Sigmund Freud was obsessed, but continues to represent the whole Western attitude. That is why Carl Gustav Jung could not stay with him. I hate Jung. I may condemn Sigmund Freud, but I don't hate him. He may have been wrong, but he was a genius. Even though he was doing something which I cannot support. But Jung was just a pygmy. Compared to Freud, he stands nowhere. The master himself was wrong, but that is another matter. Wrong or right, Freud had chosen Jung to be his chief disciple, and still he proved to be just a Judas. He is not of the same caliber as Freud. The real reason why they had to part, and I have never seen it mentioned by any Freudian or Jungian, I am telling it for the first time, was that Jung's obsession with death and Freud's obsession with sex. They could not stay together. The East, for thousands of years, has been morbidly engaged in somehow getting rid of life. I love to call a thing what it is. A spade is a spade. Neither more nor less. I want simply to state the fact. The East has suffered much just because of this morbidity, continuously thinking from the very moment of birth how to get rid of life. I think this is the oldest obsession in the world. Thousands of the same caliber as Sigmund Freud have lived under it.
and strengthened it and nourished it. I don't recall a single man who stood against it. They all agreed, even though they disagreed about everything else. Mahavira, Manu, Gautama, Sankara, Nagarjuna. They are all far superior to Sigmund Freud, Jung, or Adler, and the many bastards that they left behind. But just to be a genius, even a great genius, does not necessarily mean that you are right. Sometimes a simple farmer may be more right than a great scholar. The East has missed, and the West is missing too. Both are lopsided. I had to talk about it because this is one of my basic contributions. That men should not be worried about either sex or death. He should be free from both obsession. Only then does he know, and he knows that, strangely enough, they are not different. Each moment of deep love is also a moment of deep death. Each orgasm is also an end, a full stop. Something reaches to a height, touches a star, and will never be the same again whatsoever you do. In fact, the more you do, the farther away it is. But man lives almost like a rat. You may call it Western, Eastern, Christian, Hindu. There are thousands of holes available for all kinds of rats. But to be in a hole, howsoever decorated, almost like a cathedral, a beautiful temple, still it is a hole. And to live in it is to go on committing suicide, because you are not meant to be a rat. Be a man, be a woman. Up till now, everything has been happening unconsciously by nature. But now nature cannot do anything anymore. Can't you see it simply? Darwin says that man is born of the monkey. Perhaps he is right. I don't think so. That's why I said perhaps. But what happened then? Monkeys are not becoming men. You don't suddenly see a monkey turning into a man and proving Darwin's theory. No monkey is interested in Charles Darwin. I don't think they have even read his very unpoetic books. In fact, they are angry because Darwin thinks that man has evolved. No monkey can believe that man is more evolved than him. All monkeys believe that man is a fallen monkey. What happened to man? Millions of years have passed, and man is still the same. Has evolution stopped? For what reason? I don't think that any Darwinian is capable of answering. And know well, I have studied Darwin and his followers as deeply as possible. I say possible because there is not much depth. What can I do? But not a single Darwinian answers the basic question. If evolution is the rule of existence, then why has man not evolved into Superman, or at least something better? Don't call it super. It sounds a little too grand, a word to be attached to a man. Why is man not just a little better? But there has been no chance at all for centuries. As far as history knows, man has always been the same, as ugly as today. In fact, if anything can be said to have changed, he has become even uglier. Just the other day, I had the message that one of our centers had been attacked. All the windows were broken in a crowd attack. People took away whatsoever they wanted. Now my people have not harmed anybody. They were just meditating there. Even the policeman made the statement. It is strange, because for 2 years we have been observing these people, and they are utterly innocent. Why their house should be burnt is unexplainable. The police may not find the explanation because the explanation is here, lying down in this dental chair. I have not known a single day when there was not some trouble, and it is the strangest thing to comprehend because we have been doing harm to nobody. I have not harmed anybody. My people have not harmed anybody. But perhaps that is their crime. The mafia is okay. I am not. This world is going to remain morbid, sick. I want to say this. Accept that which is already there. Sex is not your creation. Otherwise, everybody would be using a different kind of mechanism. And there would be tremendous frustration because those mechanisms won't fit together. They don't even fit when they are exactly the same, when they are meant to be in harmony. If everybody was inventing his own sexuality, then there would be real chaos. It is good that you came ready, equipped, already what you are potentially going to be. And death too is such a natural thing. Just think for a moment. If you were to live forever, what would you do? You would not be able to commit suicide. I have always loved Alexander's search for the secret of eternal life. He finally found it in the desert in Arabia. What joy! He must have danced. But just then the crow said, "Wait, just a moment before you drink the water. That water is not ordinary water. I drank of it. Now I cannot die. I have tried all the methods, but nothing works. Poison cannot kill me. Before you decide to drink that water, think twice." The story goes that Alexander ran away from the cave so he would not be tempted to drink the water. Alexander's teacher was none other than the great Aristotle, the father of European philosophy. In fact, Aristotle was the father of the whole of Western thinking. Without him, there would have been no science, and of course no Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Without Aristotle, you could not conceive of the West. In my childhood, I remember seeing a book
in which Aristotle was teaching Alexander. And the boy said, "Right now I don't want to learn anything. I want to ride a horse. You become a horse for me." So Aristotle became a horse. He got down on all four while Alexander sat on his back and rode him. And this was the man who became the father of Western philosophy. Socrates is never called the father of the Western philosophy. He was the master of Plato, and Plato was the master of Aristotle. But Socrates was poisoned because he wasn't palatable, not easy to digest. The West wanted to forget all about him. He might have created the synthesis I am talking about if he had not been poisoned and was listened to. If his inquiry into truth had become the very base, we would be living in a totally different world. Nor is Plato thought to be the father because he was too closely associated with the dangerous Socrates. The first thing I used to say to my class each day was, "Remember, here I am the master. If you don't want to listen to me, simply get lost. If you want to listen to me, then just listen. I'm ready to answer all your questions, but I will not tolerate any noise. If you have a girlfriend here, then get out immediately, and I allow you to go with your girlfriend. When I am speaking, only I am speaking, and you are listening. If you want to say something, then raise your hand and keep it raised, because it does not mean that when you want to ask, I necessarily have to answer. I am not here as your servant. I am not Aristotle." This was my introduction every day, and I am happy that they understand it. Sometimes I may be hard on you, but I don't want to be. It is just a long habit from more than 30 years of teaching in utter silence. I was making only one point and was going to discuss it tomorrow. The point is that I am not against getting rid of the wheel, but I am against being obsessed with stopping it. It stops by itself, but not by your stopping it. It can stop only by you doing something else. That something else I call meditation. Session 19. After my grandfather died, I was again away from my nanny, but I soon returned to my father's village. Not that I want to. My grandmother herself was not willing to go with me, and being just a 7-year-old child, I could not see any future in it. Again, I pictured myself going back to the old house, alone in the bullock cart, Buddha talking to the block. He at least would have had some kind of company. I would be alone inside the bullock cart, just thinking of the future. What would I do there? Yes, my horses would be there, but who would feed them? In fact, who would feed me? I have never learned even the art of making a single cup of tea. One day, Goodyear, I had so many years of spoiling. I call it spoiling because they never allowed me to do anything for myself. I wanted to go back to the village, but it was next to impossible to regain that which had been lost. That is where I learned that it is better never to go back to anything. Since then, I have been to so many places, but I have never gone back. Once I have left a place, I have left it forever. The childhood episode forever determined a certain pattern. Although I wanted to go, there was no support. My grandma simply said, "No, I cannot go back to the village. If my husband is not there, then why should I go back? I only went there for his sake, not for the village. If I have to go anywhere, I would like to go to Khajuraho." But that too was impossible because her parents were dead. Nobody was prepared to see two deaths happen so quickly, particularly me, to whom they both meant such a lot. Bora may have been just an obedient servant to my grandpa, but to me, he was a friend. He was very poor. He was a Sudra. The word Sudra means impure by birth, and there is no way for a Sudra to purify himself. This is the work of Manu. That's why I condemn him and hate him. I denounce him and want the world to know of this man, Manu, because unless we know of such people, we will never be able to be free of them. They will continue to influence us in some form or another. Whether you are a Negro or a white man, both need to be acquainted with the insane philosophy of Manu. It is Manu who has influenced the two-world war in a very subtle way, and perhaps he will be the cause of the third. Even before Dale Carnegie wrote his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Manu knew all the secrets. In fact, one wonders how many friends Dale Carnegie has got and how many people he has influenced. He is certainly not like Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, Mahatma Gandhi. And all these people were absolutely unacquainted with the science of influencing people. They did not need to know. They had it in their very guts. I don't think any man has influenced humanity more than Manu. Even today, whether you know his name or not, he influences you. If you think yourself superior just because you are white or black, or just because you are a man or a woman, somehow Manu is pulling your strings. I wanted to say something else, but I started with the wrong step. My nanny was very insistent. Always step out of bed with your right foot. And you will be surprised to know, today I did not follow her advice, and everything is going wrong. I started with the wrong okay. Now, when in the very beginning you are not okay. Is there still time for me to say something right? Good. Let's begin again. I wanted to go to the village, but nobody was ready to support me. I could not conceive how I could exist there
alone, without my grandparents. No, it was not possible. My mother insisted that I stay with her. For over 7 years, I had not been living with my family, but my family was not a small affair. It was a whole jumbo set. In India, the family is not the same as in the West. In the West, it is just a singular, the husband, the wife, 1, 2, 3 children. At the most, there may be 5 people in the family. In India, people would laugh. 5? Only 5? It was a big family. My grandfather, which is my father's father, was a man I never liked very much. He was so different from my other grandfather, just the opposite. Very restless, ready to jump on anyone at any time. The fight itself was easy exercise, and he was continuously fighting. My father had a small clothes shop. Once in a while, I used to sit there just to watch people. My grandfather, Baba, was a genius in cunningness. The whole village would tremble. Nobody was able to conceive what his plans were. Me and my Baba were going to the river, and somebody asked, "Where are you going, Baba?" He said, "To the station." I was puzzled. What was the point? No business was being done, and you are not supposed to lie just for no reason at all. When the man has passed by, I asked, "Why did you wink, Baba? And why did you lie to the man without any reason? Why could you not say to the river when we are going to the river?" He knows, everybody knows, that this road leads to the river and not to the station. He said, "You don't understand. One has to practice continuously." Practice what? One has to continuously practice one's business. I cannot just tell the simple truth, because then one day, doing business, I may simply say the right price, and it is none of your business at all. That's why I winked at you, so you would keep quiet. As far as I am concerned, we are going to the station. Whether this road leads there or not is nobody else's business. Even if that man had said that this road does not lead to the station, I would have just said, "I am going to the station via the river." It is up to me. One can go anywhere from anywhere. It may take a little longer, that's all. Baba was that kind of man. He lived there with all his children, my father and his brothers and sisters, and their husbands, and one could not know all the people who had gathered there. I saw people coming and never leaving. We were not rich, yet there was enough to eat for everybody. I did not want to enter this family, and I told my mother, either I will go back to the village alone, I will get there somehow, and I know the villagers. They will help support the child, and it is only a question of a few years. Then I will repay them as much as I can. but I cannot live in this family. This is not a family. It's a bazaar. And it was a bazaar, continuously buzzing with so many people. Even if an elephant had jumped into that ancient pond, nobody would have heard the plop. There was too much going on. I simply refused, saying, if I have to stay, then the only alternative is for me to live with my nanny. My mother was hurt. I am sorry because since then I have been hurting her many times. I could not help it. In fact, I was not responsible. The situation was such that I could not live in that family after so many years of absolute freedom. So I said to my mother, I know it hurts you, and I'm sorry, but I will live with my grandmother. She is the only one who can understand me and allow me not only love, but freedom too. Once I had asked my nanny, why did you only give birth to my mother? She said, what a question. I said, because in this family every woman is always carrying a load in her belly. Why did you only give birth to my mother and not have another child, at least a brother for her? She then said something I cannot forget. That too was because of your Nana. He wanted a child, so we compromised. I told him, only one child. Then it is your fate, whether it is a boy or a girl, because he wanted a boy. She laughed, and it was good that a girl was born. Otherwise, where would I have got you from? Yes, it is good. She said that I did not give birth to any other children. Otherwise, you would not have liked this place either. It would have been too crowded. I remained in my father's village for 11 years, and I was forced almost violently to go to school. Each generation tries to corrupt the new generation. It is certainly a kind of rape, a spiritual rape. I was a rebel from the very first day that I was taken to school. The moment I saw the gates, I asked my father, is it a jail or a school? My father said, what a question. It is a school, don't be afraid. I said, I am not afraid. I am simply inquiring about what attitude I should take. What is the need for this big gate? The gate was closed when all the children, all the prisoners were inside. It was only opened again in the evening when the children were released for the night. The school was ugly, but the gate was even uglier. It was big and it was called the Elephant Gate. An elephant could have passed through it. It was so large.